For many years, I have been pleading for intervention from legal authorities and detective agencies from extraordinary levels of extreme violent abuse, depredation, and intimacy that can scarcely be credited. They poisoned me in the mouth. They deafened me as a child. They castrated me. They've given me Parkinson's disease, all deliberately. And they murdered my father when he was senior faculty at the University of Pittsburgh with the blessings of the university administration and Pitt football. Elements of Pitt News were involved. And I pleaded helplessly against the animosity of people I didn't even know had any reason to know who I was, much less did I ever do anything wrong to them. On October 17th, 1993, I went to an appointment at 6 o'clock to which I had been invited and not excluded. I had been told not to make any more appointments. That was a pre-existing appointment. But I went to cancel it anyway and was arrested for defiant trespass. I went into seizures. They knew that they had implanted a neurotrauma, and they knew that I didn't know they had implanted a neurotrauma, and they were forcing me into the custody of the people who had poisoned me in the first place. Wadmaker worked in the psychiatric facilities and neurobehavioral research, and the evidence shows not only that he was behind the nerve agent and an Attica State Prison psychiatrist, but also that the nerve agent was a personality change chemical which was meant to cause jealousy. The script says that perfectly clearly. It's a recipe formula that appears in the script. Now, the reason I went to the law school was because these are serious problems that needed to be solved within the University of Pittsburgh. It was not an irresponsible request. My father had been senior faculty and retired there. He had been chair of philosophy for education. He had been there for some 20, 25 years. The University of Pittsburgh, the union around it, and the riffraff who attend it are criminally insane. The city of Pittsburgh is a pot-boiling tomb of living dead stringers of George Romero looking for kicks, to whom this script was represented by people who already knew what it contained when they put out the album So. They didn't even have to look at it, or they had been Fox media agent mysteriously married into the home in which the script appeared. Before they even saw it, they knew what it contained. And they represented to these cliques of woe-begone waiters and waitresses in the far-out boondocks of the East End. They represented it as a godsend because I had had the temerity to record in print, my own hand, what they were implying in what Greg Carl called forces impinging on the persona's experience. They had deafened me and started whisper campaigns. Now, let's be clear. Pittsburgh call that was stoked into hate frenzies by Adrian Belew of King Crimson made no secret. They openly declared that they were starting a whisper campaign about a traumatized deaf person, a whisper campaign about a deaf person who they had neurologically tampered with. They openly proclaimed it. They made no attempt to hide that fact. They still make no attempt to hide that fact. What they claim is that I didn't have to be a baby about it. And you can imagine what kind of reinforcement they get from somebody like Robert Fripp, whose entire mentality is that anything he summons in his crystal ball is inherently revealed truth from a mystical connection with Allah that he achieved on the outskirts of the royal family. So all he has to do is puff into his crystal ball, and presto, whatever he wants to sell is holy edict. And they even said that on the record. So they say judge and jury in their heads. They invented themselves as the victim, and they set up a courtroom where the invented victim presides as judge and jury. That's law in the court of the Crimson King. And he claims that this is a form of celestial truth beyond fair play. Liberty and justice for all need not apply in the court of the Crimson King. It's a two virgins soccer court, to which he invited Sherman Alexie, who extended the greeting to Her Majesty's favorite, Leader Kim. And then they said, oh, we'll have a tourney of Lady or the Tiger. He can pick a door with a girl in it, or get torn to bits by an orange skunk. And this psychopathic frenzy got hold of Carnegie Mellon. The student union, you can get on microfilm and see what they did. It's a towering inferno of horrible broadcast and infamy of every detail that I have just uttered being confirmed by their monstrous so-called godsend. And what did the godsend contain? Memories of things that adults did to each other that they told me about in places like Climax 1, which are disgusting joints where performers do bizarre sexual. They left me in the waiting room when they kidnapped me to Climax 1 because I was so obviously a toddler. And yet they came out talking about it. So Jaime Carbonell sets up natural language systems and extrudes the memories of what they were talking about. All voluntary among adults who were sick in the head. They get me to remember and spew, and they say it was him, see? And then they had a letter in which I tormentedly refuted this girl's taunting. I said, basically what you're doing is inciting, you're de-romanticizing our relationship to suggest that I should have dehumanized you into a sex object. That's insane. I was in love with you. And they said, see, he's at the edge. He's at the edge. Give him a push. Give him a push. He's at the edge. You blew it, Queerball. And that's what they played. They said it wouldn't have been what you say, Queerball. They set the whole thing up with this agent from Israel. She was an agent who played this game and got me to say, and they called it a godsend. They got me to say, you're trying to de-romanticize our relationship. You're trying to make me regard you as a sex object. Why would you do that? I love you. And they said that this was an evil letter, which was threatening her. Vince Irene, Matt Marcus, Evan Nauer, Lisa Cassidy, Brian Richmond then gave the lateral pass to Will Zellbrome to pull his 2 versus Pussy Ball AIDS testing war game, which was all prescribed by the person who appears on Robert Fripp's God Save the Queen Under Heavy Manners album. The man is about to put something into a still pool, about to drop, plummet. and her name is Gail Burston. And the Seattle Queers did like this to Gail Burston. They said, Robert Fripp is Bowie's guitarist. Hail Mary to Gail Burston. And then they said, well, we better put up a Palestine flag before we get found out for covering for Netanyahu's genocides. Even though they were the victims, they couldn't bear the thought of telling the truth about what the letters said. They couldn't bear the thought of putting a stop to Penis Gabriel and David Jeffen. They couldn't bear the thought that it was a setup, that I had been tortured just as I allege, and for which there's tons of evidence. They couldn't bear the thought that the letters that were sent to me said what they said. They couldn't bear it. They denounced it. They said, no, we will not acknowledge that those letters say what they said. We will not acknowledge it. We will not. And we will encourage Netanyahu until he goes berserk some more for us. And we'll give Michael Reagan his favorite scene in a ladle. We'll pour him some more anytime he asks. How's that? And Ringo Starr was smashing at the bowel rugs the whole time, blowing things up, burning things down, whatever he wanted to do. And they claim they found another idiosyncrasy that needs to be held answerable on the supercomputer of Carnegie Mellon, who had a T-shirt, "We Ate Your Brain." And they had a reason for doing it that way. They saw in it a way to get some money by a satire of a deaf person. So they started a whisper campaign and made me an object of their sadism. I have been tortured and brutally attacked for years by the criminally insane. I plead with you for meaningful humanitarian investigation and intervention.